Well, we're here with Mo Brings Plenty at his family ranch in Kansas on set for the cover shoot for the August September issue of Cowboys and Indians. We're going to talk a little bit about your acting career, your advocacy, and how you got to be in this place in the world.
Sounds like a good idea, Kate.
All
Okay.
right. So let's start with Yellowstone. I think that that's where so many of your fans know you from, being a part of Taylor Sheridan's universe, not only on the acting front, but you're also the American Indian Affairs coordinator on set, which is a really big responsibility.
It sure is. I mean, the acting thing has been really great. Thanks to Taylor Sheridan and 101 Studios in Paramount, but then the opportunity because Taylor really has a huge heart and compassion for Indian country. He's grew up, that I shouldn't say grew up, but he spent some time with some of my tribe, some of my relatives from Pine Ridge Reservation and Chime River Reservation. And he's participated in ceremonies and so on and so forth. And so he really got a good understanding of what we face, because, a lot of the issues that pertain to one reservation is definitely throughout Indian country. It doesn't matter. And so he really highlights some of those issues, but he does it in a way that it's digestible for society, because you can't just punch society in the mouth and say, look, you have to make it to where they want to consume some of it and then just digest it and think about it, because it's the issues that we face as American Indian people is so important, and almost forgotten about. It's never talked about in the media. When people talk about the things in this country, it's usually black, white, and Latino X and Asian, and there's
Mhm.
no space for a conversation with our existence and what we face as well. But Taylor's made that space, and that it's the first production company that has its own department for the American Indian consulting side, and so everything filters through there. Whether it's wardrobe, hair, makeup, jewelry, accessories, whatever the case may be, even horses
Mhm.
and tack. Everything filters to that department. And so I'm just really thankful to Taylor Sheridan for creating that and having that space, and he's one of those individuals that just doesn't want you to stand beside him. He makes room at the table for you to occupy by just being you.
Well, and in that role, you tap elders, tribal leaders, other knowledge keepers to make sure that there's a lot of historical accuracy.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the biggest things that for me when I was offered the position, I think about our grassroots people. Our grassroots people who kept our languages, kept our traditional oral stories alive, songs, just that great knowledge that no one's ever really tapped into from this industry.
Mhm.
And so for me, it's like I want to give respect, and it's kind of my way of saying thank you for making those sacrifices to keep this alive and keep it here today for us to be able to, you know, um, enjoy it, be a part of it. And so that's the biggest thing for me, you know. And those folks don't ever get they don't get ever get a shout out.
Mhm.
And I've seen what they've been through. And so it's so important to me. That's the biggest thing that I do. I will go to a reservation, I will meet with their tribal council, and I would talk to the locals and ask, well, who's your knowledge keepers? Where are they at? And those are the people that I go to. And a lot of them, they never thought they'd probably ever get to be, because when it comes to the language, we have them come to set as well,
Mhm.
and they will be there. They work with our actors, actresses. We have language classes, and I'm there also, just in case if something happens that they have to leave, then at least some we can keep it going in a respectful way. So it's really exciting for me to see them come to a set for the first time in their lives and get treated with such great deal of respect that they probably never got back in throughout their life, you know. And so it's so enlightening, and I'm so thankful to get to experience that for them.
And you're also able to bring experiences from your upbringing on the Lakota Nation and throughout the early years of your acting career to that position too.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, you know, it's a big part that I try to tap into. Well, I don't try. I do. I tap into life's experiences with that I may have seen others go through. Um, for the character that I portray on Yellowstone, I really, I really think about what if I was a young kid who didn't know who I was, or maybe I'm that young kid again that was struggling with his own identity, and then I get a load of this character. I get to see the show, and I see this individual on that show and what he portrays and who he is, and maybe that would be an encouragement to embrace, you know, who they are.
Hmm.
You know, I always say that I don't represent the people of today. I represent the people of the past to the best of my abilities with hopes that maybe I can inspire those of today to do the same thing.
And it's pretty incredible to see the Native American Renaissance that we're witnessing across pop culture, across politics, and you're a huge part of that.
You know, I would say I wouldn't say I'm a huge part, but I'm a small part in getting to occupy a little area in that whole aspect of everything. You know, I'm just like so I'm still in awe of where Yellowstone is today and what it's done. You know, not just for me as an actor, but for all of us in Indian country. I mean, look at the great shows that evolved, you know, because people's desire and hunger and to want to understand and know us better. You have Dark Winds, you have Reservation Dogs, Weatherford Falls was there for a while. I mean, you know, you have all these other shows that are written by Native people, directed by Native people, and Native people are a high population of the employees on that are there, and so it's amazing and it's so wonderful. And finally, we're getting somewhere and we're making headway. And and the only thing that I hope and pray for is that we as Native people, we see this and we see the opportunity, and we don't let it slip through our fingers by creating little cliques
Mm.
and only doing for my friends and not doing for Indian country.
Hmm.
Because if it comes back to that, then eh, what little progress that we were making would set us back 100 steps
Hmm.
or even 100 years. And then at some point, another generation may get the opportunity again, and hopefully they don't blow it. So we have to stick together. We have to unite and encourage one another and be ambassadors with each other, for each other, to continue to keep going, you know, and literally, truly set aside little peddly differences that may have been thrown at us and given forced down our throats or forced into our minds, and stick together in this,
Hmm.
because this is a great opportunity for generations to come. And who knows, maybe at some point we will begin to see studios be born in Indian country on different reservations, you know?
Well, and speaking of being an ambassador, beyond the entertainment realm, you also are a huge advocate for American Indian affairs, again, beyond the set. Just last week, you were in Washington, D.C.
Yes, we went out to Washington, D.C. because there was a bill that was going to be passed in regards to the boarding school era. And due to the fact that we were part of 1923, which is a great show, by the way, um, I I was asked to be a part of that, and knowing and understanding what has occurred, where we come from. I was honored to be there, to be able to be a part of, you know, an advocate for that cause. And there's a great group of people that, you know, Deborah and all them, they are doing such an amazing job. And you know, they have a boarding school healing organization, and they're nonstop. and kudos to those individuals who are there on the front lines trying to make things happen. And so I'm fortunate enough to be able to come in and show, give them some support, because really it's their voices that need to be heard. And so it was just a great opportunity.
So we're here at your ranch. Tell us a little bit about why this feels like home for you.
It's I could go anywhere in the States and I'd be at home, as long as there's horses there.
Yes.
And so I love this area because the folks here they knew me before Yellowstone. And we don't have neighbors, we have really good friends. We all help each other out. Tomorrow we're gonna go help a good friend of mine out who's like a brother to me. He's not even native. And that's one thing I know about about country folks, whether they're farmers or ranchers. We all get it. You can't survive on your own, but you can live with everyone, with those that are right in your area, in your community, and help each other out. We help each other out with any expectations. And it is just, we have a lot of fun doing it as well. And if I need something done here, that I know I could just pick up everyone in my area here, a phone call away. And whether a cow's sick, we had a calf that was catching some pneumonia, and we were up on the set of 1923. Oldest bouts are back between 1923 and Yellowstone, because the temperature dropped for some reason here, and then it heated back up, and so it was really hard on a couple calves there. And so I called my buddy up, and he came over right away. He had some cows that he had to doctor up as well, so he had some medication, and he just came over and took care of them for me. And so, it's so important to have that community, and that's why I just love this place so much. It's home. Everyone's so respectful. No one judges me by my braids; they judge me by what I can do and what I do in this community to try and make it better for everyone as well.
You mentioned you feel at home anywhere there's horses. Horses have been such a huge part of your life from the early days.
Horses have always been a part of our culture. I mean, we've always had horses here long before the Spanish brought theirs, and the only reason why that society believes that the Spanish brought horses is because it wasn't documented. Just like they considered us as paleo people until the first written, when people wrote about us, then it was like, okay, so then we went from being paleo to, what we became as tribal people. And so horses have always been here. We have songs, ceremonies specifically for the horse that are thousands and thousands of years old. I mean, from the time they were the size of a dog to what they are now. We saw that growth. We were a part. I know my elders back home taught me all these stories and these understandings of how the horse grew. From the size of a dog to what they are now, and where they come from, and what they represent, what they do for us. And so, Custer once had, when he wrote a letter back to his wife one time, in his letter, he said, he came out west, and he was looking forward to face the fearless Lakota warriors. And the description was that the Lakota warriors, they spend all their time on the back of horses. And the horse culture is so vibrant and real, that everything that they do is from the back of a horse. And so it was, that's always been a part of our culture. And so my Lakota name is Tashun Kawuns Pampi, is how a female would say it. And male would say Tashun Kawuns Pampi, and female would say Tashun Kawuns Pampu. And so it means catches the horse. And so the horse symbolizes the spiritual realm. And so I understand why back then, why they always rode horses all the time. If you stay on the back of the spirit, you will never fall. And the spirit will take you home. So when we look at a horse, they are the bridge between the physical and the spiritual realm. And so not only do they carry us here in this physical world, but when we make that transition in life, we don't have a word for death. No traditional language has a word for death. We made one up, but there's no original, in the original languages, there's no word for death. It is simply a transition. So when we make that transition in life, the horse that we had the greatest relationship in our later years would also make that transition to carry us home.
And you have a Lakota horse here on your ranch. Can you tell us the story of how he came to be part of your herd?
Yeah, he became part of the family. Frank Kuntz is a good friend of mine, lives up in North Dakota, and him and his brother, they're both Vietnam vets, non-natives, but they heard the stories about Sitting Bull's horses roaming around in Theodore Roosevelt National Park up there in North Dakota. And one year, the Park Service was talking about eradicating the herd out of there. And so him and his brother pulled all their money together. I mean, they made some great sacrifices, and they purchased as many of those horses that they could, and continued the breeding program that they have, just to keep them pure, keep their existence here. And so I knew about this. I knew about these horses are direct descendants from Sitting Bull's original herd of horses.
Wow.
And so I'd heard about them, and so I met a gal by the name of Amanda Kalimian from the Canna Foundation, and she was the one that was like, "Oh, you're up there, you need to go see Frank." And I'm like, "All right, yeah, I want to go see Frank." And so she knew Frank through other individuals or other friends of hers, and so she called him up, said, "Yeah, Mo Brinks Plenty's going to be swinging through," and this was before Yellowstone. And so she helped kind of get that meeting set up. And so I stopped in there, and he took me out to the mares with all their foals. And so I walked out, and all these young foals began to walk up, and I had a lump in my throat, I'm not going to lie. And I got down on my knees, and a blue roan came up, and she stuck her nose on my forehead. And I looked at her, and I was like, "Man, I don't know what I can do, but I'm going to do all that I can to help you all." And Frank's brother has since passed a couple of years ago. So Frank's the last. And like I said, his family's been through a lot. But, without their sacrifices, we as the people, we may not have those opportunities. But Frank called me up days later, and he said, "Well, when's the next time you're coming up? I got something for you. And I got a gift for you." And they gifted me Roony. He's a Rev Roan, and so we went up there, and we picked him up, and they're not like the size of a quarter horse or anything, but boy, I tell you what, he jumped. Was riding one day, and we tied up the horses to the horse trailer, and we was getting ready to unsaddle, and we had him in a pen by himself, and boy, he come running. All I heard was boom, 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 and I turned around, and he was coming over the fence. And I was like, "Oh no!" And so Sarah Ann took off, and she was like, "I'm out of here," and we thought there was going to be a wreck. And so he got out. She took off running. Actually, what she did, she ran to the gate to go close the front gate, make sure that he didn't get out. And so I grabbed the lead rope, and I started running down, and he turned around, and he come running at me. And I swear, I was like, this horse was a giant. And just the way he moved, it was so, he really intimidated the heck out of me. All of us. And you could see that power and strength. And then I just imagine what it was like when the people were riding those horses and coming at you. And so I just been blessed. I mean, the first 4 days I went out and I sang with him. I sang the horse songs with him, and I remember the first time, like I said, he intimidated me so much that good friend of mine who's a good horseman Cole Pufferman. He's a rancher out of Utah. And so I called him up. He purchased a horse here in Missouri, and so I was going to haul the horse out. Well, I took Roony over to him first. And then when we got there, I said, man, I don't know what he's going to do. And he's like, oh, we'll get it figured out. And so I left him over there for a couple of days. For a little while, and I really didn't want to leave him, but I knew I had to because I wanted to ride this horse, and I just didn't have time to do anything. We just didn't have time to do anything, And so, and when you start a horse, you want to be, you want to be consistent. You can't go for a day or two and then take a break and then come back and expect his growth to still remain. And so when I went back, I hauled this horse that he purchased here back out to Utah for him, and I got on Roony, and we went to go gather some cows. And so I went off by myself. And honestly and truthfully, I looked up and there was a red-tailed hawk in this cedar tree. And I looked at Roony, and then it just hit me. I got so emotional, and I spoke to him, and I told him that, your grandparents carried mine, and they separated us, and I knew that. They separated us. And now here we are. We're back together. And I lost it. I would thank goodness no one was around. It was just me and him, and I got off him, and I gave him a hug, and I was just weeping, and I was just thankful to have this. Again, it was like a void, the void that I could never fill up. He filled that space, and I knew that's who the space was supposed to be occupied by.
And Roony came into your life during a really pivotal time because it was right before you started on with Taylor Sheridan with Yellowstone.
Yes. And so it's been a blessing. I mean, I'm just thankful and happy to see him. One day, because we had bison here at the time, and one day we were standing outside, and me and my nephew, Jarrett, was standing and Wyatt, the nephew, was sitting on the fence, and we had buffalo on one side, and Roony was on the other, and we were all within 5 feet of each other. And I told them boys, I said, look at this. Take a moment and really, truly take this in right here. I pointed at the buffalo. I said, the Buffalo Nation, they almost wiped them up. The Horse Nation, they took them away from us and almost wiped them up. And then they tried to wipe us out. But here are we all 3 of us are still here. So it was a beautiful moment and a good teaching moment, not just for them, but for myself as well. As a great reminder. It's so important to remember those things, those true facts, and never forget where we came from so we can appreciate who we are more today and have more compassion for all the others, because we can't change the past. We can't even change 5 seconds ago. But what we can do is do something now, change the 5 seconds yet to come, and make it better for all people.
And I know for you, the idea of coexistence is one that you're striving for. And in today's world, that can seem like it'd be a really distant dream, but you think it's achievable.
Oh, of course. If I thought it was absolutely impossible, no human being would be alive today. But we're all still here. So it's apparent that the higher power still has faith in us. We just need to re-grasp our faith in the higher power and in each other. And so I believe it's achievable.
So let's talk rodeo. This has been a big joy of yours. You tried it for a while with, per your description, questionable success, but it's always been a passion of yours.
Absolutely. I mean, growing up on a reservation, we had an icon in Howard Hunter Sr., who was a saddle bronc rider, great Indian cowboy, great horseman. he was just an inspiration. And see, in our household, we didn't have running water, electricity. So I didn't get inspiration from television. I got inspiration from the folks that was in our area, and Howard was one of the main ones that was very inspiring, you know, and so I wanted to be a cowboy, you know, a rodeo cowboy as well, and so Howard he tried helping me out. I think I was beyond help though. I mean, I figured it should be easy because I can ride horses, and if a horse starts bucking, I can handle it, but uh, a quarter horse bucking is a lot different than an actual bronc in a rodeo circuit, you know, and so there's the power within a rodeo athlete horse is much more different than the horses that we rode every day. And so I tried it out, you know, and mainly bareback horses and bulls, and and I was thinking the other day, and in my travels, how many times I actually successfully rode a bareback horse race. I can sing, actually had a pickup guy get me off was probably maybe half a dozen out of all the bareback horses I got on. I got on a lot more than that, and I just it's not meant for everyone, you know. And so kudos to those individuals that have that talent and that ability, just like playing a guitar. We all know how to hold a guitar, but how to actually play it and make it sing with you is so much different than someone just strumming the strings and hitting the key or hitting different chords. And so I was the same thing like that, you know. And so I did that, but I got scared of the horses, and I stuck with the bulls. I was a little bit better off with the bulls than I was with any of the rough bucking horses. Um, did that for a little bit, but I was successful in that as well. And I helped. There was a bullfighter by the name of Beaver Scott back home, and I would help him out. I would fight. There was other guys that I knew that were rodeo clowns, bullfighters, and so I would get in there. I did that for a couple of years. That was a lot of fun, but very nerve wracking and scary.
That
Um, and so, but I missed riding, and I wanted to get back into the shoots, and so went back into riding bulls and got pretty banged up. And I figured, well, maybe I better just grow up, and meaning that I better be real with myself,
and
you know, and I'm just not cut out for this. And so I hung it up, and but I miss it. I miss that adrenaline rush. I miss being around it, and so I got back involved in going. You know, it's tough to just be a fan once you've been behind the shoots.
I bet.
It's tough to be just a spectator. But a good friend of mine who is a successful bull rider, Michael Vasu, is the commissioner for the Indian National Finals Rodeo, the INFR. And we were kids together. We grew up, you know, around each other and stuff, and just we were still good friends. And so we were talking, and I'm like, man, why don't more and more people know about the INFR? You know, because and that's one thing when people think about cowboys, they're either Caucasian or black.
Mm-hmm.
Very seldom do you come across someone that's going to say, "Oh, I know some really good Indian cowboys," and in which there are some really good hands out there that are native in Indian country. You know, where we have some great ranchers, amazing ranchers, and some amazing farmers as well. And so, you know, the agricultural realm kind of doesn't really include us in that. You know, where when they think about us today, we should be more about leathers and feathers. You know, but we are very much part of that industry as well. And so, with the success of Yellowstone, you know, and attending a board meeting of the INFR, you know, I became an official spokesman for the INFR with hopes that we can bring a little bit more recognition to our athletes, our great athletes, and also our great, you know, stock contractors in Indian country, because we have some great bucking stock as well, you know, amazing bulls, amazing broncs. And so just really want to keep that going and bring that more to society and let them know that, hey, you can attend the INFR in Vegas as well and go check it out at South Point. You know, it's a great event. Again, you'll see some very talented individuals.
Because even though it wasn't the life for you, maybe you weren't cut out for it, there still is a huge amount of value that people can get out of that. You know, you say in many ways that it saved you.
Yes, it did. You know, it brought me out of my shell, so to say. And I like living life on the edge a little bit. And so if you're one of those individuals, then give it a good run and enjoy it, you know, because it won't last long if you're not that good at it, you know, because it'll beat you up. And so, but for me, you know, but when I went to rodeos, you know, we didn't see each other because I've been to non-native rodeos as well. We didn't see each other by the color of our skin, or we didn't judge each other by our faith or belief or our political views. We were all there trying to achieve the same thing, competing against each other, but yet that competitiveness never got in the way of our friendships, you know, nor did it hinder us getting involved and trying to help each other out and make sure that we're all safe, you know, and if someone got hung up, you know, yeah, there's rodeo clowns out there, there's bullfighters out there, but back then, man, there was such a strength or a brotherhood. You'd have about 20 cowboys about ready to jump over their chutes to come help you out too. I mean, you know, and so if you ever watch some of the old footage of the NFR, you'll see that at times, you know, and other footages of where cowboys are hung up, you know, their friends or their fellow competitors would come and assist however they can too. And so it's, you know, that's what I loved about it. And that's what saved me the most. And it helped me to overcome the what do you I would hate I would like to I guess what it is racism, you know, that you experience as a native back then. And I mean, these braids came with a price. It wasn't easy, you know, and so I went to that phase in my life. And again, thank goodness rodeo was there, and the competitors that were there that put on the rodeos, the individuals and the people that were all there to watch. I mean, you know, it was amazing.
And there was a point in your life when you weren't totally sure if you were proud of who you were and you weren't embracing your identity the way you do today.
You know, since we're kids and we not by at the hands of our own, but at the hands of society, we're taught to be ashamed of who we are. And so when you're young, you can look around. I mean, especially growing up on a reservation, anything outside of the reservation you didn't fit into because you wasn't welcome. You could fit into it, but you wasn't welcome. And so there was a lot of, you know, I guess just hard feelings towards it all. A lot of, well, I guess not hard feelings, but frustrations. And a lot of my frustrations were directed to, and I'll say God, so everyone knows what I'm talking about. You know, the higher power. But my frustrations were at God. You know, if God is so all-knowing and so perfect, then wouldn't God know of the struggles that we have as Indian people and be aware of that? And if so, then why continue to allow us to exist? Why was I born being this? I didn't ask to be this. God dreamed me. God made me to be this. And so I did. I struggled with that big time. And I just didn't know what I told my father one time when I was a kid, you know, when I grow up, I'm going to move away from here. But me moving away wasn't about just moving away to try to better my life. It was about moving away to get away forever. And I told him, I said, I'm going to change my name. I'm going to cut all my hair off. And if I can figure it out, I'm going to wash the color of my skin out. And so I struggled with that. But then as I began to participate in traditional ceremonies, I began to realize and understand that there was a purpose, there was a reason. I used to tell my grandparents when I was a kid, I wished I lived back then. And they'd say, well, when's then? I said, back in the days of Brings Plenty, Crazy Horse, Sitting Bull. And they said, why? Why Takoja? Why grandchild? So because if I lived back then I'd be right there willing to die for the people, to protect the people. And so one of my grandmothers said, so if you wish you could live back then and you would be willing to protect the people and give your life for the people. Well, be our Crazy Horse today. Be our Brings Plenty today. We still need them today. Not just back then, but now. So be them today. Whatever. Walked away. But that haunted me.
I bet.
And so through different inspirations, through Dances of Wolves, through, and before Dances of Wolves, it was Outlaw Josie Wells, Chief Dan George. I saw some acceptance there, made it a little bit easier to accept myself. And then again, like I said, Dances of Wolves showed another side of us, showed the loving, compassionate side of us. So it was even more able to accept myself. So, I mean, I really, and then of course now Yellowstone, but before then it was, all right, I think about our boarding schools, what happened in the past. Yeah, those are tragedies that we need to address. Those are events that need to be dealt with. And we do need to make it possible for those who are survivors of that era to be able to heal. And then, but what about us of now? I mean, so for me, I made it a mission in my life. Like, I mean, the sweetest revenge that I could ever get, the greatest justice I could ever get for all that has ever happened to my people was me simply being exactly what those children and our people were told they could no longer be. And no one could do a dang thing about it. And so here I am. Culture is everything. But I understand and know, how do I simplify it to make it easier for the next generation?
Mm-hmm.
How can I make their lives less of a struggle to maintain their identity, cultural identity? So the biggest thing for me is that, well, hey, if I could get society to breathe a breath of life back into cultural diversity, then it would be easier for our children to be exactly what they were created to be also. So cultural diversity is a huge thing. If you want diversity in society, you can't just base it on skin color, because then the cultural people are still going to suffer. Language is still going to suffer. Anything cultural outside of what majority of society believes is the most important thing and the only way, everything outside of that's going to suffer. And we would still be in extinction, or we could still go extinct. And so to change it, we have to fight for cultural diversity. How many folks can still speak their language? How many folks can still tell you, here's the origin of our history. Here's the origin of our language. Here's the origin of the horses, our horse culture. Here's the origin of where we come from. Here's the birthplace of where we come from. How many people in this country still know that? Can go back thousands of years of knowing where their family came from, and so, and it doesn't make me better than anyone else, but maybe I can inspire others to begin to look at where they come from. Where did my family name come from? And so cultural diversity is very important. So now I want a better life for our children, but I want them to not forget who they are. And so I'm going to continue to fight for cultural diversity.
Can you talk through the significance of your family name, Brings Plenty?
Brings Plenty is, how we say in our language, ota'au, you know, when he was a young boy, he was first, and I'll give you the short version of it. His name, he was called Little Chief. And one day, the elder came to him and told him, "You're going to go with the buffalo hunters. And on this journey, you're going to show them something." You know, this young boy, I mean, think about it. This young boy then asked, how, when, and where? He didn't ask those questions. He said, okay. Went back to his camp, his family's camp, gathered his things, told the mothers and everyone that he was going to go with the buffalo hunters. And back then, to go with the buffalo hunters was a big thing. And so he went. The trust that the people had, they didn't have faith, they had trust. They had trust in anything and everything spiritual. They had trust in everything that the Creator has made. They had trust in the Creator, period. So he went without question or doubt. And they went. And on their way back, they came across soldiers. And then this young man, the other warriors told him, they said, here, and they told him and another warrior, here, take the food, go this way, we'll come in from the other side. So those men were going to sacrifice themselves so the people could live. But Little Chief said, no, today, you're going to see something. And he rode off by himself and went down into this draw, and the men were positioned in a way that they could watch him. They seen him. This man took a few leaves of sage, prayed, rubbed the sage on his chest, and rubbed it on the chest of his horse. And he jumped back on his horse and took a buffalo robe. And he sheltered himself with this buffalo robe. And he charged it towards his soldiers. And those that were closest to him drew out their firearms and began to shoot at him. He stopped, turned around, and he rode away. So instead of them pursuing him, they began to dismount and take an attack formation. And so, again, which they were all set up, he charged them again. And he jumped over the line of the men into where the other horses were, and they saw nothing was happening to this man or this horse. So those holding horses gave them to their riders, and they all mounted up and they took off because they didn't know what they just saw. And so Little Chief rode back to those other warriors, and he took that buffalo robe and he shook it up. And all the bullets that were intended for him and his horse fell out of this buffalo robe. So they went back to the people. And all these other men told the village, the camp, what they saw, what they witnessed. Because our people have always believed in witnessing. So they saw it. And so that night, during the celebration of giving their thanks for the buffalo that had given their lives for them to live and just life in general, they gave him the name Brings Plenty, because he brought a fight to men without taking a life, and he brought life back to the people. So it's continuous, brings plenty. And that's where the name came from.
Your first name, so many people know you as Mo, but your full name is Moses, has a very different origin.
Yeah, it does. When our people were put on these concentration camps, aka reservations, they couldn't comprehend that when a woman and a man were together, the woman had her own name. You know, whether it was seen by the nation or full robes or pretty pipe woman, whatever, she had her own identity, and the man had his. So to encourage and push people towards the new concept of civilization or new concept of way of living, they couldn't comprehend that. So what they did is they took the surname, because they were trying to take us away from the matriarchal setting and place us into the patriarchal setting. And so Eastman, who was a native that worked for the government, he was instructed to work for, come up with names for the people. So they took a lot of biblical names, and that's where to help us to assimilate to a different way of prayer. So the name Moses has been around since reservation times.
So your name then brings together and really reflects a lot of Native American heritage of this combination of these strong cultural traditions, but also the forced assimilation.
Yeah, and so that's why I go by Mo, because I prefer my Lakota name, but not everyone speaks Lakota, and so but yeah, so I just go by Mo.
Well, Mo, thanks for taking the time to chat with us today.
Thank you so much, Kate, for everything. I sure appreciate it, and it's good you're all out here today.